This is Technically Legal, a podcast about legal technology, innovation in the legal industry, and the impact tech is having on the law. I'm Chad Main, the founder of legal services company Percipient, and on this episode, I talked to Scott Stevenson. He's the co-founder of Spellbook, which is an AI co-pilot for transactional lawyers that plugs into Microsoft Word. Today's episode is a great conversation with Spellbook co-founder Scott Stevenson, and a lot of it has to do with the intersection of technology and creativity. Spellbook is an AI contract co-pilot that plugs into Word. Despite being the founder of a legal tech company, Scott is not a lawyer, but is a computer engineer by training. Scott got into computers because as a kid, he was really into video games, and in the fourth grade, he talked his parents into getting him a computer because he wanted to figure out for himself how to make video games. By middle school, he was building websites, and eventually he landed an internship in electronic arts. We will hear, too, that Scott is also interested in electronic music, and that he launched his first startup with one of his university music professors. The company is called Mune, and it was founded to create a whole new musical instrument that combined the power of digital music with acoustic music. It's a really interesting instrument, and if you search for Mune music online, you can find it. There's a great video I encourage you to check out. So the Mune team raised a little bit of money, but pretty quickly figured out that maybe building a niche music instrument may not necessarily lead to startup riches. However, it was during the Mune days that Scott started to think about building a legal tech company. That happened right after he got his first legal bill and figured out there might be a more efficient and less expensive way to get legal work done. So, as they say, he made a pivot, and he founded Rally with a lawyer friend of his. Rally was a document automation and templating engine for law firms, but it later begat Spellbook, an AI-powered drafting and reviewing tool that plugs into Microsoft Word for transactional lawyers. But here's the funny thing about Spellbook. The idea itself was originally conceived as a marketing idea to generate leads for Rally. But now, Spellbook lives on, and Rally has taken a back seat.
Got my first computer in I was in grade 4, I remember. And it was pretty young. It was a PC with 2 gigabytes of disk space. And I was very into video games at the time. So I think that was kind of the big thing for me that got me interested in computers and technology. I had like Super Nintendo at the time, and I loved playing games. And I just fantasized about making games myself for a large part of my youth. So starting in grade 4, I always just wanted to make games. I was very young. I had no idea what I was doing. I'd look online. How do you make games? And people would say, well, you have to learn to program. You have to learn C++. So I'd ask my mom to, pick up a C++ book, which, probably didn't digest very well at that age. By the time I was in middle school, I'd done some kind of web development, a little bit of web development in grade 6, like HTML and stuff like that. And then by middle school, I was starting to hack together little games and things like that. Nothing very significant, but that was kind of the initial thing that got me into it. And then, much later, I ended up, working for Electronic Arts is like one of my first. I kind of started internships, in Vancouver. I spent almost a year there working with them on, working on games and game engines, stuff like that. I was, during university. So that was kind of one of the first things that got me really interested in programming and tech.
It sounds like your parents were supportive. Were they tech savvy? Were they into computers at all? Or is this something you got into on your own?
They actually were not really, no. Yeah, I would say they... my dad was skeptical. My mom pushed, I've heard the story, my mom pushed like, oh, I think computers are going to get boring. My mom worked at a library, so they had to use computers pretty early on there, I guess, to catalog books. She worked in the cataloging department, and they had computers pretty early to help manage, thousands and thousands of books at the library. So she was like, I think computers are going to be important. So, she kind of pushed, I guess, us to get one. My dad was not so sure. It didn't take long for me to know more about the computer than they did.
I got to talk to you about, is it pronounced Mune or Moon? How do you pronounce that?
Mune, yeah.
Mune. The idea stems from electroacoustic composition, which is, if I understand right, a combination of traditional instruments and electronic instruments. Is that right?
That's right, yeah.
Are you a musician also?
Yeah, so that was the other, thing that got me very interested into programming and technology is... I was really interested I picked up guitar when I was pretty young. I love making things. I love creating things. Was music or games or whatever. I just wanted to make stuff. And I was interested in that. And then I was interested in electronic music. And then, also in university, I was working with music professor. His name is Dr. Andrew Sallin. He's also a composer and he's done some amazing work. He had identified this problem where he was trying to bring electronic music into the classical audience. So people who, sit down and watch an ensemble play on stage music or an orchestra or whatever. And he was trying to, introduce more electronic synthesized sounds and processing to that audience. And it's really hard for them to get it because to them, the electronic musician just looks like a person behind the stage,
Right.
messing with some knobs, and they just look like a DJ or something.
You've seen that meme, right? It's the picture of the DJ, and it's like, come see my laptop live, and there's like tens of thousands of people in front of them.
Yeah. And I think like to that classical audience, especially, people are like, they just pushing play. Like, what do they do? They have iTunes open and they're pushing play. Like, what's that person doing? And so we worked together to kind of build an electronic instrument that could be appreciated and the audience could really see the cause and effect of what's going on. And that was Scott.
I watched the video. It's really cool. And it's mune.com, correct? The video is still available
music,
there.
MUNE, music.com. Yeah.
And I'll put a link to that in the show notes. But describe what it is, because it's really cool and really versatile.
It's sort of like the body of a guitar without the neck. And it's this thing that it's made of wood. So we wanted to feel like an acoustic instrument, and you can kind of hold it on your lap, similarly to a guitar.
Yeah, it had the contours.
It has contours around it. And again, you can use it for a bunch of things. You can use it for, triggering samples or like drum sounds, things like that. You can use it to control the volume of different tracks for mixing type things. You can use it to play notes and things like that too. So it's just like a very versatile electronic instrument, because electronic music, you can do all sorts of things that you can't, do in the acoustic world, whether you can play drums or you can play notes or things like that. But in the package, it felt very tactile and feels like as a musician, like you actually have a relationship with this instrument, and the audience also kind of is able to have that relationship, seeing you play it and watching the cause and effect of what you do. And it has lights in it. It was kind of a, cool hybrid design, I think, of, elements of traditional instruments and the wooden design, but also it has white LEDs and stuff in it too, which look kind of cool.
Last question, because I could talk about music stuff forever. The video, the person sitting down, but did it have a strap? Because it seems to me, you could get a strap on it, and like the guitar, you could get on stage and mess around or something.
Yeah, we actually did have a strap as well. So yeah, you can put on the strap if you want to stand with it or use it different ways, or you cannot use a strap. But yeah, it does have a strap as well. Yeah.
But working at that startup, it kind of ultimately leads to Spellbook. You launch a company called Rally. I heard part of the genesis story was you guys were spending a lot of money on lawyers at Mune, and you said, man, there's got to be a better way for startups to do this.
Yeah, so Mune ended up being my first company. It was a little bit naive. I don't know how big the market is for kind of niche electronic music instruments, but I was very passionate about it, and people really thought this thing was cool.
I don't think you should give up on it either.
No, we're going back. Yeah, I still love it. And yeah, there's still these units kicking around. They're still used in different capacities, but myself and this professor worked on this, and then we actually spun it. It was my first job after, we say university in Canada, college. And first job after college was, actually working on this instrument. We spun it out. We did the whole tech transfer thing that a lot of universities have, and we set up a company, my first company ever. And we raised a tiny amount of angel money from a previous boss of mine, and tried to really commercialize this thing. And I didn't have much money at all at the time. I had not much savings as a student and a new grad. So you raise a very small amount of angel money. But to me, it was a lot of money, because when you're a student and you graduate, you don't need much. You're okay living on ramen noodles or whatever, and you don't need a nice place. So I didn't need much, but I needed something to keep myself going and to keep the company going. We raised a little bit of angel money. And before we knew it, we actually had legal bills that added up to like half of the money in our bank account. And I was just like, what the heck just happened? And so, to be clear, I'm not a lawyer. My co-founder, Daniel, is the lawyer at Rally, which became Spellbook. I was from the technical side, and I was just like, whoa, what just happened? I'm just set up a basic company, did some basic IP work. We did a design patent as well, which maybe we shouldn't have done that. But, we didn't do that much. And before we knew it, we had some pretty big bills. So that was part of the, inspiration for wanting to start a legal tech company. It was like, people should just be able to start a company and protect their IP for reasonable amounts of money.
Rally was a document template creation application, right?
In between, I worked for another company. I was the director of engineering at a totally unrelated company. But yeah, I had this thing in my head. It was like, man, like there has to be a way to make legal work, transactional and corporate legal work more efficient. But that led us to starting Rally. So Rally was a document automation and templating engine. I would say we were, again, still pretty naive. Like, I'll be very honest. Like, we were naive and actually wrong on a lot of stuff. Like, I was wrong to start a niche electronic music instrument company. There's not that much of
Yeah, but
it's not a great business model, but it was fun.
but you learned from that.
I learned a lot. Yeah. I was young, and that we'll get back to it someday, at least as a hobby project. But I was also very naive about how hard it is to be a lawyer, how hard that work actually is. I'll be honest, I was frustrated at the time. I was like, we'll just write software and templates. And then I was very naive. I was like, no, we don't need lawyers anymore after this. And we were dead wrong on that. That was very stupid. And we're like, we'll make a really good templating engine, and that's going to speed everything up. Of course, people have been working on document automation since the 1970s. This is not new.
Right.
Lawyers know about document automation and templating. Hot docs came out in like 1996 or 1993. It wasn't a super new idea, but we kind of naively dove into it. And actually, firms did take it up. We sold that technology to like 200 law firms. We sold our web-based doc automation platform called Rally. We have some unique elements where you could send questionnaires to your clients to help gather you info, which would then feed into our doc automation engine to help you produce the docs that you needed. But I think us and every other doc auto company was naive in the same way, which is like the work that lawyers do often is very bespoke. No deal is the same, especially if you're at a law firm. Every client's needs are so different. The paper you're working with is so different. Maybe if you're an in-house team, you can really standardize things really well, or in your case, you work with a lot of in-house teams. But if you're at a firm, which was our primary customers, putting in the time to build out all these precedents and templates, and then you just get bespoke deal after bespoke deal come across your desk, it's pretty tough. So people would buy this technology and they would say, like, we really need this. Doc automation has been around a long time. We want to adopt it more. Then we'd be like, they would purchase the product, and then it would take them like a year to gather all their precedents together and to like actually, get all their templates set up and everything. Then they'd be like, you know what, this is awesome, but my work is a little bit too bespoke.
What years was Rally?
Around 2018, we started kind of getting it moving. Although it wasn't until 2019 until we raised our first round of venture capital and had our first employees and stuff like that.
When we come back after the break, Scott tells us how a marketing idea to generate leads for Rally turned into Spellbook and changed the direction of the company. I'm Chad Main, and you're listening to Technically Legal.
We need to do more with less. That is the key takeaway nowadays from almost every survey of in-house counsel. But what if it didn't have to be that way? What if you actually could do more for less? By combining legal expertise and technology, Percipient enables legal teams to get more work done for less. Buried in contracts and sales is frustrated with turnaround time? We can help with that. Did you just get hit with a subpoena and reviewing 100,000 documents and files will tax your resources or cost you a small fortune in billable hours? We can help there too. Our team of legal professionals leverage tech and project management principles with the right amount of human oversight to deliver precise, efficient, and cost-effective legal solutions. Whether it's legal operations and contract management support, subpoena compliance, or document review, Percipient is your partner in really doing more for less. Percipient. Legal services powered by technology.
Then I read something interesting. You said that Spellbook was initially just kind of a lead magnet. You thought you were just messing around with it, and that becomes a product. Did I misread that?
No, that's correct. Yeah. So, and in 2022, we launched Spellbook. So Spellbook was our generative AI copilot for transactional lawyers, and built right into Microsoft Word, can help you draft new clauses for your agreements, review and find issues in your agreements and things like that. We kind of want to just throw it out there as being like the first company that launched sort of a real large language model, generative AI based tool for lawyers. And yeah, we thought it would be a lead magnet. We thought it would just get us some attention and get some leads, and it would just be a little side project. Yeah.
What was the vision? Like, all right, they're using our Word add-in. How would you then push them to Rally? What was the thinking there?
We didn't think that far ahead, really. We just thought, hey, there's an opportunity here to make a splash, and we think there's something cool here. So, hey, well, if they sign up for Spellbook, we can also get in touch and tell them about Rally.
You guys were really ahead of the game because I think originally it was built on GPT-2, right?
That's right. Yeah. So the very first versions of Google GPT-2, they were not quite there. So we didn't fully push that out. But as soon as, GPT-3 was available, we started getting much better results. And then we pushed it out. And yeah, we pushed this out before ChatGPT, really before any other generative AI legal product that I've come across. We had it out there. It was summer of 2022. So it was still close when it was fully launched. So it was pretty close to ChatGPT, which I think came out in November 2022 or October.
What do you attribute to being so far ahead of the curve? Like, how did you guys even know to go and look at these large language models, specifically GPT-2? Like, how'd that get on your radar?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the value of our company is to, try to stay ahead of things and to always, we want to try to ship today what's going to, be other companies might be shipping in 2 years. And that's just kind of built into our culture. So we build things really quick. And we just try to suck in as much information as we can about what's going on out there. Yeah, I'm pretty plugged into like Twitter or X, if you want to call it that, and that's definitely where I think you see a lot of these tech trends you almost count it to the T. It's almost 2 years in advance. You see people toying with technology before it ends up in commercial products in like, I would say like tech Twitter. And so something now I would say that you see on Twitter is now people are toying with AI that actually controls the mouse on your desktop and moves between multiple applications and stuff like that. That's something that I think is, within 2 years, we're going to now see that in probably legal tech products where you can have an email open from a client and you can be like, hey, help me draft a response to this client and also download their attachment and do X, Y, and Z to it. And AI will actually go and do those things. So like, that's just an example of how like in tech Twitter, you tend to see kind of these early signs of this sort of stuff.
Does that example you gave right there obviate the need for some APIs? Like, because it's just using the native apps in your computer, right?
100%. Yeah. So this means AI will be able to access pretty much anything that runs on your computer very soon. So
that's interesting. I digress.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Spellbook though.
Sure.
As you mentioned, it is an add-on to Microsoft Word, but I meet you at the bar, you're sitting next to me, and you say, hey, I'm a co-founder of a legal tech company called Spellbook. And I say, hey, what's your app do?
We're an AI co-pilot for transactional lawyers that really helps you draft and review contracts. That's our bread and butter. So we can help you find that clause or language from past language you drafted, or we can generate a clause that can kind of fit an agreement to meet your specs. We can also help you review agreements. And I would say our most popular thing that we do today is you can provide any instruction like, I want to negotiate this agreement for my client and make sure that their data is kept secure. And Spellbook will take that instruction and actually redline the whole document using track changes in Word to actually make a whole bunch of concrete suggestions throughout your document about what language you might want to push for or modify.
And they're just at their suggestions. They're just like, accept changes. You got to say, hey, that's cool.
You got to accept changes, yeah. But it will give you those direct suggestions of you should change X, change Y, change Z.
Another cool thing, too, is you can highlight a clause and say, hey, protect our data, but be aggressive. And it will change the way it thinks about the clause.
Exactly. You can highlight a clause or section and say, rewrite it based on these instructions, or make this aggressive, make this sound more professional, make this sound less like legalese, all that sort of stuff we can do as well.
Explain how you can bake that in, your own advice into Spellbook so that when it goes to redline the contract, it is changing the jurisdiction to Delaware. It is making the indemnity neutral.
Great question. Yeah, so we do have the concept of playbooks within our review feature. So if there is a common type of way that you review an MSA or things that you're looking for in an MSA, you can actually save a set of instructions that you can then run again and again against your agreements. We also have something called our clause library, where you can actually connect all of the previous docs that you've drafted or worked with, and we'll parse it out and say like, oh, you've used this clause like 20 times before, and help you surface that clause if you need it in the future.
Now, let's talk about the real bespoke stuff. Let's say you practice an area of law that's really technical. Patent license agreement or something there, and there's some real obscure language you like to use every time that maybe, the average AI is not familiar with it because it just hasn't been trained enough on it. How does Spellbook deal with that? Like, if you see this clause or something similar to it, please redline it thus.
So you can use our playbooks feature for that. So you could write that as an instruction in your playbook to say, if you see X, then do Y. That's definitely a way to do it. We have a new beta feature we call policies, which is a little bit different. The playbooks are really geared towards redlining a document and making changes. Our policies are more of a quick check, and this is something we're just about to roll out over the next month or so. But The policies are really like, what are kind of your checks and balances you want to do on every agreement of type X? And so we're going to have that ability too, where you can build your own policy that you use again and again and kind of get a score of how many of your checks are passing or failing or things like that. So that's something else we'll be launching.
Another thing that I think is important to point out, I think you've got some strong opinions on this based upon my review, some articles and podcasts you did getting ready for today. Really important to point out that you guys made a conscious decision to add this to Word, meet lawyers where they work, because you figured out, and I agree with this 100 million %, that you should meet, especially lawyers, because they don't like new apps, where they work, meet them in their own workflow.
Yeah, it's such a good question and such a good point. I mean, the reason we figured it out is because we did it the other way, the wrong way for so long. With the Rally product, I mean, we built our whole web application where we'd take lawyers out of their normal workflow to our own UI. We banged our head on the wall with that for years of being like, oh, lawyers should want to come in here to do their work, or they should want to draft their documents in here. And we just saw how hard it was to change the habits, and like people just didn't want to go to yet another app. But lawyers wouldn't say that to us. What took us years to figure this out is like, and I don't think this is just a lawyer thing, by the way, either. I think it's, everyone is too inundated with different apps, different,
right.
We have such busy lives. Introducing some other whole new element to your workflow is so tiresome and difficult for anyone these days. But people won't tell you that. People will say, "Oh yeah, that sounds easy. I'm happy to use it. This looks great." You'll always get good feedback showing this to users. But when you actually look at the usage patterns, like, is this customer still using the product 3 months after they bought it? That's where you see the truth
right.
of, are people able to actually change their habits? And it's kind of unfortunate because a lot of law firms think it's their problem. That's like, oh, it's my fault. Like, I'm bad. I should have changed my habits by now. And then you realize it's actually it's a problem in the segment as a whole.
Interesting. Yeah.
And in software as a whole, people are sick of jumping between so many different apps. So yeah, we very much, our whole company is based around the idea of lawyers know how to ride a bicycle. Let's give them an electric bicycle. So nothing changes. They just are able to pedal faster and have this wind at their back that helps them do what they do better. They know how to do their job and they know the tools they like. They don't want to radically stop using Microsoft Word or go into some Word replacement, which a lot of tech companies have tried to build. It's worked out well for our users, I think, very well.
So a related question to that, though, and for good reason, many in legal, and nothing just outside legal in general, are a little worried that they just can't throw a sensitive contract into ChatGPT. So I know you're getting this question all the time, the concern like, well, I can't put my client's data in an app. I don't know where it's going. How does Spellbook protect that information? How do you allay the fears of your users about that risk?
Really good question, and something that's like super, super important to us. I think there's a few things that we do today to make this very secure. And yeah, lawyers have some of the most sensitive data in the world, so this is really important. Number one, we don't actually store any of your data or documents unless you want to in, say, your playbooks or things like that, but you can completely opt out of any data storage whatsoever. So all that happens is your data gets encrypted, goes over the wire, we get a response back and it's fed to you, and no data is kept or stored by us. So that is one way that, sensitive customers are able to use our software. On the other side of things, some customers do want us to kind of learn or kind of train other data as they go. We're able to do that while de-identifying the data and removing all of the key and sensitive information. So if they do want to go a little deeper and have the AI learn their preferences and, say, store their clauses in our library over time, we can fully de-identify the data and remove key sensitive information in PII from anything that is kept or used for training. So those things are important. The other thing I would mention, though, is one thing I saw the other day is like, if you are using, say, any Microsoft Office 365 products, there is a list of all the third-party providers that they say your data could be sent to, and it's 300 parties long. So if you're using like, Office 365 or Outlook 365, Microsoft has 300 other parties that they say they could be sending your data to. So just keep that in mind, that I'd say we're much more locked down than that. Significantly more, and implement a lot of best practices for security and privacy of client data.
So a couple of years ago, I think you raised 10 or 11 million bucks. And then just not too long ago, I think it was this month, you announced you raised 20 million.
Early 2022, we raised our first 10 million. And then about a year later now, we have just raised 20 million US.
So 2 questions. Why did you go back and raise more money? And second part of the question is, now you got this 20 million bucks. What's the plan for it? How are you going to utilize it to grow the company?
So number one, things were just going exceptionally well. We grew 10x in terms of the number of lawyers that were on board last year. So that was just unprecedented level of growth, especially during kind of the current landscape in tech, I would say. A lot of tech companies are not doing as well. So we just had incredible growth last year, growing to around 1,700 law firms and in-house legal teams. That caused one of our existing investors, to Inovia, so they're, I think, the biggest VC fund in Canada. They had put in a smaller check into our earlier round, and they said, you know what, we really want to kind of triple down on this. It's going super well, and we want you to accelerate into it. So we had a lot of growth, so a lot of growing pains too. We're trying to figure out how to service a couple thousand customers all of a sudden. So we wanted to raise the capital to help support that growth and help support our customers and help provide them all the features and things that they're all asking for. How are we going to use the money? Number one is on product development. I think AI is advancing so quickly right now that any product team in this space has to be innovating very quickly to bring that value to their customers as fast as possible. So we have a long list of new features and functionality that we're bringing to the product to make it great. In terms of what that is, it's making these things more accurate and very resistant to any kind of hallucination. That's always on everyone's mind. There's a lot that can be done to make these systems very accurate for lawyers. So that's a big part of it. Personalization is another big pillar for us. So enabling these systems to learn your style and preferences over time as you're working and to use your language and to do things your way is another important pillar for us. And branching out beyond Word to other workflows is something else that we're doing.
What do you mean by that?
Kind of that example I gave earlier, like you get an email from a client and they send you an attachment and you want to, draft a response and review the attachment. We can actually help you pick up some of the work at that point and help coordinate from there. So, there's a bunch of things we're working on there. And we're, of course, growing our support team and success team, growing our sales team. And we're currently booking around 500 meetings per week with prospective customers. So
wow,
that's all we have to support. Yeah.
You say you surveyed 5 lawyers to come up with the name Spellbook, and that worked out great. Saved a lot of time. Where'd the name come from? And what about the name do you think resonated with these lawyers you talked to?
I had a post on LinkedIn or something talking about how we make decisions with very low sample sizes, and we find that if we're, you can always reverse these decisions, but when we picked the name Spellbook, we had a handful of different names. We just pulled them out of the ether, to be honest. I don't know where it came from, really.
You should have used GPT. My buddy's kid was making a business, real obscure. And I went in there and ChatGPT, I said, hey, give us some names. It gave us 20 great names.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's a great idea. The product felt magical, and we kind of wanted to feel like a sidekick to the lawyer. So we're kind of like, how do you make this feel like a sidekick to the lawyer, but not, we also never wanted to feel like it's replacing the lawyer, because that's really not what we're about. We want to be a tool for the lawyer, not like, oh, this is the AI that's going to take over your job. That's never what we actually are strongly in the camp that human lawyers are going to be very needed for a very long time. So how do we create something that feels like a tool that's magical, that can support the lawyer and give them superpowers? And so, I think that's where Spellbook came from. And I think, we also had an inkling that a lot of lawyers that we knew loved reading high fantasy novels and fiction. So they had that often growing up, a lot of lawyers enjoyed just reading fiction and fantasy novels. So we thought that there might be a little bit of a resonance there.
Well, Scott, appreciate your time. People want to learn more about Spellbook, get a hold of you. Where do you want to send them?
Spellbook.legal. That's our website. And you can also email me at scott@spellbook.legal as well.
Okay, that's a wrap for today's episode. As always, we really appreciate you listening. If you want to subscribe, you can find us on most major podcast platforms like Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, etc. Also, if you like us enough, I hope you leave us a favorable review. Thanks again for listening. Until next time, this has been Technically Legal.